Hey everyone, welcome everyone to Prompt Engineering Conference 2024. This is Anandaganesh Balakrishnan, and I'm working as a principal software engineer at American Water in the data engineering and AI department. Today I'll be talking about prompt engineering for database development and maintenance. So here's today's agenda. I'll talk about what is prompt engineering and what are some of the prompt patterns which is followed across the organizations, and what are some of the useful prompt techniques that can be leveraged to get the maximum out of the large language models. What are some of the key database development tasks? What are the critical database maintenance tasks which is done across different databases, and how prompts and RAG, retrieval augmented generation, can be used for efficient database task automation, and what is LLM ops and how prompt can be maintained using prompt template, and what are the models, tools, and documents which I have used to show like how prompts can be utilized to do the database tasks. So, what is prompt engineering? Prompt engineering is the only way to interact with AI to get the desired output. So, it in a way it can be called as how inputs can be designed to interact with AI. So, the prompts helps uh, guiding LLM behavior, and of course, the first time prompt might not be the 100% perfect prompt. It is always going to be an iterative process. So in that iterative process, of course, the humans will be involved in it. So human in the loop is done for adjusting the prompts based upon the output which we get, and how prompts can be leveraged for fine tuning the outputs. What are some of the ethical considerations uh, should be followed to avoid any harmful behavior like prompt leak, or users can type anything to elicit output from the LLM. And what are and prompt is an application, key application in compilation NLP tasks. So, what are some of the prominent prompt patterns that are used by various organizations? The first one is a persona pattern. So, in that persona pattern, the user clearly defines the role within the prompt, and the user will also specify the context within the role that is going to play. And in audience persona pattern, in the pattern, the user will uh, mention who are the audiences where the output will be delivered, and along with the audience, the tone and language of the output is mentioned in the prompt. The other one is question and refinement pattern, where initially the prompt will be like a broad question, and depending upon the output, the question is refined so that to until we get the desired response. The another key pattern which is followed widely across organizations is the template pattern, where the prompt will have a reusable structure, like it will have a brackets in between where that can be replaced with appropriate entities. This is just to maintain the task specificity and consistency for the audience and the output which we are generating. The other pattern is the meta language creation pattern, where the users can provide custom syntax and or vocabulary. The interesting pattern is a recipe pattern where the prompts will have step by step instructions, so that the LLM will be specified for different tasks within those steps. So in a way, it is called task decomposition using step by step. There are like other alternative approaches pattern like multiple solutions, creative thinking, open-ended prompt. This is to get a creative output out of the LLM. So what are some of the prompt techniques which are used? Some of them are like zero shot, where user does not feed anything and the LLM outputs without seeing any example given by the user. In single shot, user provides one example and the LLM adapts it to elicit response. A few shot is user provides a few examples, and many shot is many examples. So depending upon the clarity, conciseness, and relevance and specificity, one of the techniques can be adopted by the user. Also, depending upon the prompt size, and it's called depending upon, as well as depending upon the token size, the cost is involved in it. So the minimum the size of the prompt, the minimal the cost is. So some of the other prompt types are recursive prompts, contextual injection, explicit constraints where the constraints are specified. Like, for example, the user wants to query uh, a set of records where a certain number has to be greater than a particular number. That constraint can be implemented over there. And chain of thought prompts, where a series of prompts will be written by the user to get the output. And sentiment directives, prompt templating is which is widely used across organizations, where it is a kind of generalized. It can be used for multiple use cases. And directional stimulus prompting is giving specific directions to the LLM. And React prompting. So what are some of the key database development tasks? So any software development task starts with requirement analysis. So again, the database development also starts with the requirement analysis, where within the requirement analysis, the components are identified, which components needs to be modified, what components needs to be created, and are there any conflicts between the components based upon intra-change dependency or interchange dependency within a change release. And database design, where conceptual model is created and then the logical and physical model based upon how normalized version one needs to see. And the actual schema creation is done in the physical model. Creation of packages, function procedures, and related optimization, and idempotency and caching, bulk data. These are the performance improvement measures which is done within the packages functions. And query generation and optimization, data cleansing, and data transformation. Some of the key database maintenance tasks are setting up backup and recovery, automating the backup schedules, monitoring the backup processes, and predict potential failures in these processes, and performance tuning, analyze the query performance data on a continuous basis, and suggest optimizations and how the query plan can be improvised, and generate indexing strategies. Security management, identifying security vulnerabilities, suggesting best practices for database permissions and encryption, database monitoring, providing real time monitoring, and identifying if there is any anomalies by going through the logs, and based upon that, predictive analytics can be set up. Statistics gathering is a key for metadata generation, which will also help in running the queries efficiently. Data catalog validation, again using the metadata, the users will be able to see what the data is using the data catalog. and upgrading and patch management, recommending optimal patching schedules or generating patch impact analysis reports. So, how a prompt will be typically used? There's also a concept called retrieval augmented generation. It goes hand in hand, where generally the user provides a query and prompt, and it is embedded into the vector database. And using the embeddings, top K contextual information is done, search is done using similarity search. And the end user query prompt and the top K information is fed into LLM to generate needed response or desired response, I would say. So, initially in the vector database, for example, for database maintenance and database development, the best practices can be loaded as vector embeddings. Ideally, those best practices documents are split into chunks depending upon the size of the document and stored as vector embeddings, which is used while the user queries using the prompt. So another key step which is followed by different organizations is LLM ops, because there are a lot of moving parts and each needs to be maintained. For example, the data observability component comes into picture. In the previous slide, we talked about how RAG and prompt engineering can be used, but then a data observability layer is needed to monitor whether the prompt management or prompt engineering is correct, right? Or if the vector embeddings are latest, if there is any staleness, or some of the embedding needs to be replaced, or if any changes needs to be done in the prompt template based upon the response. Whether whether the foundation model needs to be used, or the model can be fine tuned so that fine tuned model can be used for a particular use case. So those kind of observability is needed, and the organizations are increasingly using LLM ops to perform this. So for my for database development and the maintenance using prompt engineering, I've used these tools and documents. Like I use the LangChain framework. For LLM, I used Llama 3 and GPT 3.5. For local RAG, I used Chroma DB Vector Store. For embeddings, it's Olama embeddings. For SQL chain, it's SQL database chain. And agent, it's SQL agent. This is to create and execute queries, check query syntax, or retrieving table descriptions. So once a prompt is employed, the SQL agents take care of the background steps. The database used is MySQL. So, what are agents and chains, and why? How it is used for database task automation? At high level, these are the steps of any SQL chain and agent. So, first, when the user enters SQL query, the model converts user input into uh, the SQL query. So, the once the user prompts something, I need this to be done. Model converts user input into the SQL query and executes a SQL query, and the model responds to the user input using the query results. So, along with the user question, the user also inputs the prompt, either as a single prompt or the strategies which we discussed before, or as a prompt template. So, SQL agent and chains are primarily used to do the tasks which the user has requested. It also uses a prompt which is it has been inputted by the user. For example, the SQL agent can answer questions based on database schema as well as database content, like describing a specific table. It can also recover from errors by running a generated query, catching the trace back and regenerating it correctly. It can query the database as many times as needed to answer the user question. It will also save tokens by only retrieving the schema from relevant tables. This can be done using the prompt engineering as well. Can specify what needs to be searched and what tables, which column needs to be queried. So the SQL agent will pick those clues from the prompt. SQL chains are a little bit more rigid than agents. It's used for generating queries that will be run based on natural language questions, primarily used in creating chatbots that can answer questions based on database data, building custom dashboards based on insights a user wants to analyze. So let's take a look at a simple prompt which user can give. I've used LangChain framework and OpenAI, and I have connected MySQL database, and I can specify what tables needs to be included. For example, here I've included only employees, but then you can provide as many tables as you can, provided it's available in the schema. So, for example, in the MySQL database, employees is a schema, and we have a different set of tables like departments, department employees, department manager, employees, salary, and titles. And some of the simple prompts are like, who are the employees that start with letter G, right? List only 5 employees. Or how many employees that are with the department finance. Generate an update statement which updates the salary by 100 for a particular employee and for the particular for date range. Analyze the table departments and gather statistics. This is a part of database maintenance, and execute the analyze statement. Who are the employees that are with the department finance? And you can also the user can also specify what columns needs to be in the output and how many rows should be there. So another way of uh, writing prompt is like generate normalized schema. The entire schema can be generated using prompt. The user can specify the entities or table names and the column names, and the agent or the chain can execute it based on these simple prompts. So we have already discussed about some of the prompt patterns in the earlier slide. So here is one example of how persona prompt pattern works, where you in the prompt you tell like you are a SQL developer and you have to answer user queries and provide relevant information to help in their search for departments and employees. For example, in the input you have given the employee that start with letter G, and in the context, the table employees needs to be searched, and the output has to list some of the employees that start with letter G. So this is how you the prompt is generated using the persona prompt pattern. The LLM outputs based upon the persona which has been specified in the prompt. So here's an example for template prompt pattern where the task is to retrieve specific information from specific tables. For example, the template is write a query to retrieve from specific columns bracket and from the table name which is in the bracket where the conditions. And this template can be used for different queries depending upon different tables and different conditions. It is highly reusable. One such example is write a query to retrieve the employee's first name, last name, and hire date from the employees table where the employee's gender is male, the hire date is after 1st Jan 2000. And if this template can be used inside and those variables inside the bracket can be replaced with appropriate table names, column names, or conditions. There's another pattern which is the recipe prompt pattern where For example, here we have the tasks are decomposed in the prompts. Like instead of single prompt, we have given like four steps where if you want to update employee salaries in a specific department by 5%. If you increase the salary of employees in a specific department by 5%, right? So the user we have given four steps. The first one is identify the employees belonging to the specific department using the department employee table. Join the salaries table to get the current salary of these employees. Calculate the new salary by increasing it by 5%. And update the salaries table with new salary values. So these are the four steps which is given in the prompt, and the LLM generates the update statement based upon these four steps, which is very detailed. It also executes based upon if you want to execute it or not. So this is an example of single shot prompting. It's similar to simple prompt, but here the user provides one example, and the LLM picks from that example and executes or retrieves output. For example, here we are trying to retrieve all employees who work in the finance department. So provided example is retrieving employees from the sales department, where we provided all those the query with the appropriate joins, and with the department name as sales. Once the user provides this query, the modified query, which is output by the LMS. It changes the department name to finance. Of course, this is a simple example, but this is how the single short prompting works, where one example is provided to the LLM, and LLM adopts that example in generating the response. So this is an example of recursive prompting with explicit constraints, where the recursive prompts guide the user or system through a step-by-step process to incrementally build complex queries. This is particularly helpful for multi-table joins or hierarchical queries or recursive queries or incremental data extraction, where in the recursive prompt, the user specifies find, for example, find all employees under a specific manager, including subordinates, recursively, and explicit constraint is find only those employees where the salary is greater than $60,000, and ordering sort results by descending salary is to prioritize higher earners. So by using these recursive prompts and explicit constraints effectively, complex query generation can be managed. For example, recursive queries like manager-employee hierarchical relationship can be managed using this explicit and recursive prompting. So, how prompt template can be used for database maintenance? Where earlier we saw an example for database development, and here we're going to see for database maintenance where we want to the user want to analyze indexes, a particular table and particular schema, or you can ask the user can ask the LLM to generate any potential improvements for query performance, or review the overall performance of the employee schema and provide suggestions for optimization, focusing on query performance, indexing, and resource utilization, or identifying any deadlocks that might occur in the employee schema and suggest steps to resolve them, generate a backup plan for a particular table or the entire employee schema, either it's a full or incremental backup strategies, monitor the growth of tables in employee schema and recommend strategies to handle database bloat or expansion, such as partitioning or archiving, checking referential integrity between tables in the particular schema and report any violations, document all schema changes in the employee schema, and implement version control strategies to track modifications over time, review the current user privileges in the employee schema, and recommends changes to enhance security, ensuring the principle of least privilege is followed or not. And identify, which is a common use case, is identifying slow running queries in a particular schema, in a particular table, suggest optimizations to improve the query performance. So these are some of the prompt along with the brackets where the entities can be replaced. So such kind of template can be used for database maintenance. A few examples for chain of thoughts prompting, sentimental directives, and directional stimulus prompting, or for example, to improve the performance of the queries and employee schema. Let's start by identifying potential inefficiencies in the structure and usage of employee tables, like employee salaries and department employee, and what steps should be taken to analyze and optimize query performance across the tables. Please explain the process step by step, considering indexing strategies, join conditions, data distribution. So this is one such example where this prompt encourages a step by step reasoning process to identify performance bottlenecks, leading the model to consider a holistic optimization approach for the schema. The other way of the prompt engineering is this prompt directs a model to suggest performance boosting strategies with a positive framing, encouraging efficiency without sacrificing accuracy. The directional stimulus technique, where the user provides certain directions by focusing on specific areas of the schema, such as the department manager or title or tables, encouraging the model to generate targeted performance improvement strategies, either to improve the IO or reduce the query execution time. Such kind of directional stimulus prompting can be made. So, as I discussed in the previous one of the previous slides, where RAG can be used along with the prompt engineering to elicit desired response. Sometimes hallucination happens when where the model outputs some undesired data or which is not relevant to what the user wants. It's either can be rectified using updating the documents which have been loaded in the vector database, or improvising the prompt engineering either by adding more context or changing the prompt pattern or changing the prompt techniques or providing more input to the prompt. So there are like other ways to reduce the hallucination, like advanced RAG with self correction, where you can do hybrid search using RAG as well as web search, or deploy agents to do web search for relevant documents, or use Langsmith for evaluation. So there are some other use cases for prompt engineering, like designing data warehouses, designing data virtualization, data catalog creation, data mesh creation, and data fabric creation. These are the latest technologies which are employed by the organizations where prompt engineering can be used uh, to generate desired responses to improvise the productivity of the developers and users. And that's all, everyone. Thank you, everyone who has attended this conference. And feel free to connect me using the LinkedIn, which is available through the barcode. I hope this session was helpful and gave great insights to you all about how prompt engineering can be utilized for database development and maintenance tasks. Thank you again, everyone.